Walk through your home right now. Laundry room, bathroom, kitchen, nursery. Count the brands you see. Tide, Bounty, Charmin, Pampers, Gillette, Crest, Oral-B, Febreze, Old Spice, Vicks, Head & Shoulders, Dawn, Olay. Different brands, different purposes, different aisles at every store you've ever been to. One company, every single one of them. And most Americans have spent their entire lives buying all of these without ever knowing that. This is the story of how one company built an $84 billion empire, hiding in plain sight, in every room of your home. Cincinnati, Ohio, 1837. Two men married two sisters. Their father-in-law had one suggestion. You're both in the same business. You're competing for the same customers, the same raw materials, the same workers. Why not combine? William Procter made candles. James Gamble made soap. They shook hands. They signed a partnership agreement. Procter & Gamble was born. In a year of financial crisis in America, two brothers-in-law with combined savings of less than $7,000 started what would become one of the most powerful companies in human history. For the first 100 years, Procter & Gamble grew the way most companies do, one product at a time. 1879, Ivory Soap, the soap that floats, their first major product and their first lesson in what Americans will remember. 1946, Tide, the first heavy-duty synthetic detergent. Procter & Gamble didn't just launch a product, they created an entirely new category. Within 3 years, Tide was the best-selling detergent in the United States. It has never lost that position, not once, in 80 years. 1955, Crest toothpaste. The American Dental Association endorsed it 5 years after launch. First toothpaste in history to ever receive that endorsement. Overnight, every other toothpaste became the one without the ADA seal. 1961, Pampers. Disposable diapers didn't exist before Procter & Gamble invented them, not as a mainstream product. Before Pampers, parents used cloth diapers, washed them by hand, every single day. Procter & Gamble eliminated that, built a billion-dollar business doing it. By the way, wealth starts with the mind. Subscribe to Money and Numbers. Now, back to the empire. Here is where the strategy changes, and here is where most people stop paying attention. By the 1980s, Procter & Gamble understood something most companies never figure out. Building a brand from scratch takes decades. Acquiring one takes a check. 1985, Richardson Vicks. That's how Procter & Gamble got Vicks VapoRub, the thing your mother put on your chest when you had a cold. Procter & Gamble bought the company that made it. 1989, CoverGirl. Yes, the makeup brand. Procter & Gamble owned CoverGirl for nearly 30 years. Most Americans have no idea. But the acquisition that changed everything happened in January 2005. Procter & Gamble announced they were buying the Gillette Company. Price, $57 billion, the largest acquisition in Procter & Gamble's history. And what did they get for $57 billion? Not just razors. Gillette razors, yes, but also Duracell batteries, Oral-B toothbrushes, Braun electric shavers. One check, $4 billion brands. The man who shaves with Gillette uses Oral-B to brush his teeth, puts Duracell in his TV remote. Same company, every morning, every night, every time. Here's the part nobody explains. Procter & Gamble doesn't just own brands, they own categories. Laundry detergent, Tide, and Gain, and Dreft. Different brands, different positioning, different price points, different customers. Same company collecting every dollar no matter which one you choose. Home care, Dawn, Febreze, Swiffer, Mr. Clean. Baby care, Pampers, Loves. Feminine care, Always, Tampax. Paper products, Bounty, Charmin, Puffs. They don't just compete with other companies, they compete with themselves across every aisle of every store in America. And they win both ways. By 2014, Procter & Gamble owned nearly 200 brands, and then they made a decision that surprised everyone. They started selling them. Over the next 5 years, they sold more than 100 brands. Not because those brands were failing, because Procter & Gamble realized something most companies never do. More brands doesn't mean more power. Focus means more power. They kept 65 brands, the 65 that dominated their categories completely. And today, 21 of those 65 brands each make more than $1 billion in annual sales. Not the company, each brand, individually. 21 brands, each worth more than $1 billion, all under one roof. Here is what the wealth mind takes from this. Procter & Gamble built $84 billion in annual revenue using one strategy consistently for almost 200 years. Find what Americans use every day. Make the best version of it. Own the category completely. Not the flashiest strategy. Not the most exciting story. Just find what people need every single day. Make the best version. Own it completely. The wealth mind walking through a grocery store doesn't see competing brands fighting for shelf space. They see one company's portfolio management strategy displayed across 30 feet of shelving. That is a completely different way to look at the same aisle you've walked down your entire life. One more thing. The next time someone in your house reaches for the Tide, or grabs the Bounty, or opens a new pack of Pampers, or brushes with Crest, remember two brothers-in-law, $7,000, Cincinnati, 1837. That's where all of it started. Your wealth mind needed this. See you later.